Hello and welcome to MenuDocs. My name is Vex and welcome back to another episode of Phue Dashboard. In today's episode, we're going to be doing lots of stuff. We're going to finish up our authentication route. We're going to create a base.html file using Bootstrap and lots more. So let's get started. Let's open up our workspace. Okay, now that we've got our workspace open, let's create a couple of folders. First, we're going to create one called routes, and then we're going to create another one called static. Inside of static, we're going to create one called JS. And inside of static again, we create another one called CSS. In our templates folder, let's create a file called base.html. This is going to be the base HTML file for all of our web pages from now on. It's going to include the navbar and maybe a footer. Let's get started by setting up a basic document. By using mnet, we can type in exclamation mark and then hit tab. Now this is going to look a bit funky because it's going to look weird, but this is the cool thing about Flask. You can actually render HTML files like we did, and we can send certain data to it. This file might look a bit odd with some stuff because we're not going to be using tags. Flask has got a cool way of pushing data through to the file. We're going to use a thing called a block. To do this, we can use the two curly braces with percentage signs, and in here we can declare a block and then call it something. I'm going to call this title. And now we need to close the block to let Flask know that's the end of the block. You'll see what these does later on in the episode. It's pretty cool. In here we don't want to have a space. Over here we want to have a space, and then we're going to put Phue, whatever you're calling yours. Right, now that we've done that, let's get Bootstrap. To get Bootstrap, just type in Bootstrap into your Google or whatever search engine you use, and it should be like the first result that comes up. Hit get started, and let's copy these links. I'm going to copy the CSS, and I'm just going to paste it underneath here, and same thing for the JavaScript. Sweet, now that we have Bootstrap installed, well, on our site, let's get started. We want to create our navbar, so I'm just going to put a comment here and I'm going to call it start of navbar. And then just one underneath it, end of navbar. So when I'm looking over my code in future, I can understand what's going on because it might get a little bit hectic in some of these files. So it's just a good reminder. Now let's go back to Bootstrap and type in navbar. I'm going to use this the first example that comes up. I'm just going to hit copy. And in here, I'm going to remove some stuff. I'm going to remove this form because we don't want the form. I'm also going to remove this disable and this drop down menu. We only need two items in our navbar, home, and I'm going to call this login. Right, up here, background dash light's going to look pretty terrible. I'm going to set this to primary, I believe it is. If you're unsure of what the colors are, you can go to Bootstrap, type in colors, and you get a list here. So yeah, primary is a nice blue color. Info is another good one too. Now I'm going to change out some of these hrefs. I'm going to put / there to take us to the start of it, and I'm going to change it from navbar to Phue. In our first one, I'm going to do the same thing here, just put a / there, and then for the login one, I'm going to put /auth/. You'll see why in a second. Now, if we go to our file folder and open up templates and open up base.html, you can see what it looks like. Now, it doesn't look very good with the black text there, so I'm actually going to change this to white. To do this, we can just go in here, and in the classes, we can go text-white. And I'm going to do this for all of them. Alright, now that it's all white, that looks 200 times better. Underneath our end of navbar, let's create another block. But first, before we do that, we should create a div called container. And I'm just going to copy this in here because this is going to make the content nice and fluidy type. You'll see what I mean in a second. So When we create another file and we tell the file to, this is what the content's going to look like, it's going to push through here and it's going to be inside of this div class. If I've just put a bit of text in here to show you, you'll see the text is going to appear along here, but I probably should add a break tag so it doesn't look very squashed underneath the navbar. There you go. So you can see it's coming across now. It's, you know, it might be a bit bigger or smaller than your screen. If you don't like container, you can use container-fluid and it'll come across and leave a gap here. Again, if you go to the documentation, it'll explain the use cases for both of them. I'm going to use container, I'm going to remove this, don't need it anymore. And that's pretty much our base.html file done. Right, let's create another HTML. So in our templates, let's create an index.html. And this is where everything's going to start looking a bit funky. We want to extend our base.html file, and to do this we can do the same thing using the curly braces %, and type in extends (base.html). So basically this is going to copy this file pretty much and paste it in here as if it was in here, and underneath it we're going to put in our first block title, and we're going to access the title one, and in here I'm just going to put home, and then I'm going to go %, and we're going to tell it that's the end of that block, it's the data we want in it. So when this file is rendered, it's going to read this, and this is going to be home-phue. Now let's do our content block content, and same thing, we're going to end it end block, and I spelled that wrong. And in here I'm just going to put in 2 curly braces this time, because you use the 2 curly braces when you're directly sending specific data through the render function. So in here when we go render template, we can go like comma content equals, you know, hello, like hello, or you know, just whatever you want. But we got to make sure in here that we have it the exact same here. So if I set this to like MenuDocs, I need to go to the index.html file, or the file I want that is being rendered, and I need to make sure that is corresponding, else it's just going to show up as text. Now that we have got that done, let's fix up our login.html file. Before we get started on that, we're going to just start separating our JavaScript, and in there we're going to create, or in our JavaScript folder, we're going to create something called auth.js, and in our login.html file, we're going to get rid of that JavaScript and paste it in auth.js. Now let's import our JavaScript. So we can go script source equals /static /js /auth.js, and just add a closing script tag. Spelled that wrong, my bad. Now we can get rid of all this stuff. We don't need the body, we don't need the HTML. We can actually get rid of all this. Now it looks very weird at the moment, and it looks probably improper to you. That's fine, don't worry. I'm just going to remove all these spaces as we don't need them. You don't have to if you don't want to. It's just OCD, I suppose you could call it. And in here we're going to do the same thing as we did in our index.html file. We're going to go extends base.html, and we're going to give it a title too, and I'm going to call this auth, call it whatever you want, login, authenticate, up to you. And let's create our content block. So block content. We're not going to do the other one where we use the 2 curly braces, because we're not going to be sending specific data to this. We just want it to render this and, you know, let it do its thing. So we're just going to use this one. And again, you'll see why in a second. Right, now that that's all done and dusted, let's close these. And in our CSS directory, we need to create a new file called main.css. And we're just going to use the overflow-x hidden base.html file. I forgot, so we're actually going to need to import this. We're just going to go link rel equals style sheet. You can go type equals text /CSS. It doesn't really matter, as long as you got that style sheet one in there, it'll be all good. And we can just do the same thing, static CSS main.css. Right, we're done with the HTML side stuff now. So in our routes, let's create a file called auth.py. In auth.py, we're going to need to import some stuff from Flask. So from Flask, import blueprint, render template, request, redirect, and session. And we're just going to create our auth, and I'm going to call it auth route equals blueprint. And I'm just going to put auth in here because that's what it's going to be called. And we need to pass underscore name underscore. We need to create another directory called utils. Inside of utils, we need to create a file called encrypt underscore handler. We're going to need to import some stuff. So import hashlib. We also need to create another file, and it's going to be called secrets. We're going to move to a database later, but just for now, I'm just going to create a secrets Python folder. And in here, I'm going to create a variable in uppercase called password. Now, we need to create an encrypted password. We can do this by opening up idle. And we want to import hashlib. And we want to print hashlib.sha512, and we want to convert a string into bytes. And I'm just going to put in MenuDocs, and this is going to be my encrypted password. And we're going to use the UTF-8, and then we want to type in hex digest. And that's my encrypted password right there. So just copy this into your Python idle, whatever you're using. Change MenuDocs to whatever you want. I'm just going to call it that because that's going to be nice and easy for me to remember. And I'm going to paste my encrypted password into there. And we're going to go back into here. We're going to import that. So from utils.secrets import password. Now let's create a function called encryption check. And we can use the Pythonic syntax to use underscores to make it look nicer. And we're going to pass through a password variable in the function, and we're going to make it a string. Now it's going to be unencrypted when we pass it through. That's why we're going to encrypt it. So we can go password equals hashlib, and we're going to get the SHA512, and we're going to go bytes password, and then we're going to use the UTF-8 encoding, and then we can just type in .hex digest. If you've got a linter installed, just ignore this. It's because, like, if you were to invoke this file directly, like open up your terminal and type in Python encrypt underscore handler.py, it won't be able to find secrets because this is like a package. It gets all confusing, don't worry about it. But because this is going to be our main entry process, I suppose it's a logic error pretty much. Right, now we can check if the passwords equal each other. So we can go if password equal, and then our uppercase password. Probably should call it something else, you know, like encrypted password. But we can change that later. And we can just go return true, else return false. Sweet, so if this encrypted password is not equal to this, and like exact equal, then basically it's going to tell you, nah, false. It's not true. Right, now we can go back to our auth.py file, and we can go add in another import. Probably already guessed what it's going to be. It's going to be from our utils, and it's going to be the encrypt handler. We're going to import encryption check. Now let's use the deoperator. And we're going to go .route at the end of that, and just put in / methods, and we're going to allow the get and post, like we did in our main.py file. So the get and post are the two different types of your HTTP connections and stuff like that. And now we need to create a function called auth_route underneath it, and sweet, now we can start determining which request we got. So we can go if request dot method is equal to get. I'm just going to put in a function or comment to do finish, and then else, just so I don't get an error. I mean if request dot method equal to post. We can just go pass for now, fix it up in a second. So we want to go return render template, and we just want to render our login.html file. So this is going to look for our templates folder, find HTML or login.html, and send it to the user. And it's going to render it to make it look all nice, which you'll see in a second. Anyway, in here, let's get our form data. So we can go if email equal request dot form email, and if we go to our login.html file, you can see we called our email input field email, and we can get password is equal to request dot form code, I think we call it, sorry. Let's double check to make sure. Yep, code. Now let's create an if statement to make sure these two data we're receiving is actually correct before we create a session. And we can go if email dot lower is equal to, I'm just going to create an email. This is not a real email, so I wouldn't even bother trying to send it an email. And we're going to use the and syntax. So if that's true, and encryption check password, if that is true, we can go here and we can create a session, and we can go session user is equal to, and I'm just going to call it, Vex. You should probably call it or make it something more elaborate, but just for today's episode it's going to be that. And in here we're going to go return redirect, and it's going to redirect them to the main page. Let's just render that page again, and they can try logging in again. I'm going to render our HTML file, login.html. I will later on, in the next episode, just quickly do the, invalid credentials, because I'm going to run out of time this episode to do it. Sweet, that's everything we need to do for this file. Let's go to our main.py file and let's clean this up. Oh boy. We can get rid of this route because we don't need it anymore. And from the top, I'm just gonna create a comment, router imports. And I'm just gonna go from routers. I've set this name wrong, routers dot auth import auth route. Sweet, and underneath here we can go app dot register blueprint auth route URL underscore prefix is just going to be equal to /auth. And I'm just going to put a comment there because we're going to be adding more routes later. So I'm just going to call this comment register routers. Now we need to set a secret key for the Python Flask session encryptions. Call it whatever you want. I'm going to call mine, don't tell anyone this because they could, if they find out what it is, they could attempt to crack session stuff and all that blah blah blah. I'm gonna call it MenuDocs, you know, change it to something, don't tell anyone what it is. Right, in our index route, we need to create a couple of if statements, and we need to go if user in session. So we also need to import sessions. And we need to go if session user equal to, I believe I just made it, set it to vex. We can go render template or return. This is going to be the end. Return render template index.html, and we're going to pass the content variable that we created in our index.html. You are logged in. And if not, we're just going to go else return render template index.html content equal to, please log into view this page. I'm actually just going to copy this because the next line is just the exact same. You don't need to change anything apart from the indentation. And I accidentally activated a keybind. Don't know how I did that. Don't know what I pressed, and got rid of that. Alright, sweet. Is everything. So let's, you know, turn it on. Pray to God we don't have any errors. I'm the master at that. Here's our first error. Okay, so here it is. I forgot this needs to be set like this. Forgot the return here. Sweet, so it's still working. Fill out this, and then I just go like this. It still says please fill out the form correctly, so our JavaScript's definitely working. So let's go and put in the correct stuff, which is vex at menudocs.org and then MenuDocs. You're logged in. Sweet, it works. So alright, so that's gonna be the end for this video. You know, it's we went through, added Bootstrap, set up a nice, you know, folder structure and everything. You know, got our static files. You know, we split all our files so it's nice and easy. And you know, this Bootstrap, oh, it's just, I mean, in my opinion, it looks like 200 times better already. And we haven't even added much. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And I hope you enjoyed. Please leave a like if you did. You know, leave any recommendations, suggestions, you know, thoughts about this video in the comments, because I do read them and I respond to a lot of them. I know Connor does. You know, you'll see me responding on my own account. And you know, subscribe too if you're not. That would be greatly appreciated. And thank you for watching. Peace out.